It's London Fashion Week and it's our first discussion of the day, and we're going to be talking about Louise Gray. And I have a lovely London panel with me who will introduce themselves, starting with Hannah.
I'm Hannah Almassi, Grazia's Deputy Fashion News and Features Editor.
I'm Daryoush. Najafi. I'm a freelance journalist, fashion journalism lecturer and contributing fashion editor for Vice magazine.
I'm Steve Salte. I'm Digital Marketing Manager at ID and I'm also a menswear blogger. My blog's called Style Salvage.
I'm Caryn Franklin. I'm a fashion commentator and co-founder of All Walks Beyond the Catwalk, and I've worked for about 31 years in fashion actually. For ages!
Yeah, you win on the introduction. What have you guys been enjoying of London Fashion Week so far? What's been the highlights?
Last night I really loved Marios
Yeah.
Schwab, thought that was beautiful, continuing his amazing kind of red carpet gowns. I'm going to see a lot of those around soon, I reckon, on A-listers. That was a highlight. Really looking forward to J.W. Anderson later this evening, and Thomas Tate has been much hyped.
Yeah,
and much
Thomas
talked
Tate,
about.
everyone.
That was the surprise of the season, I think, so far anyway.
Yeah.
So obviously it was competing against Rai Rai, doing a River Island thing, so people had to make a choice at some point of who to go to, but I think Thomas Tate.
All the good people went to Thomas Tate, all the people that actually like fashion went to
People that
Thomas
really
Tate.
cared, yeah.
That's really interesting.
It was a great show and a great collection, which you don't,
Yeah, really, really amazing. I asked this question to everyone who does our panels at the end. I say, like, what are you looking forward to for London Fashion Week? And everyone has said Louise Gray. Absolutely everyone. It's kind of the resounding answer. Why are people so excited by Louise Gray? What makes her so...
Well, I joked on Twitter saying, I was coming onto this kind of the panel. I said, I'm expecting a minimalist and monotone collection. You just know that it's going to be fun, and it kind of represents everything that we love about London anyway. It's exciting, it's colourful, it's well made.
She's a hell of a lot of fun, and she's a very modern woman. I think one of the things, for me about British fashion is that a lot of it is still essentially cocktail dresses, and that she goes out, she has a really great time, she gets, I don't know if she does really get the bus, but you can imagine her getting the bus. She lives in Dalston, she likes to have a really great time. It's not just a sort of corporate PR thing. So I think, and then you get that from the clothes, and like Steve said, it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's an honesty about it because she lives that life, and she creates a collection around that as well.
I think there's quite an important space as well, which we've kind of referenced about London. One of the things that I feel is sometimes gets overlooked and is so important is that rebellion stance that London offers. So I feel when I'm looking at what Louise is doing, I'm kind of mainlining that almost anti-fashion space. She doesn't really feel the need to fit into a kind of uniform approach to trend or what's selling or what does everybody want. And I think in the early days I kind of looked at some of her things and I was slightly out of time with it. She was there, and it has taken us a while to catch up to her aesthetic. In actual fact, that kind of integrity of energy, which isn't, okay, last season I did this, what have I got to do, what have I got to churn out, cog in the wheel process, that more and more we're all really tuned into the importance of that.
I thought it was really interesting what you mentioned about how a lot of other London designers are doing kind of these cocktail dresses and essentially stuff that's really formal, because Charlie Porter wrote this interesting thing on his blog, I think it was today or maybe yesterday, where he was like, London womenswear just seems quite behind what we see with London men's. It is still about these formal dresses and this cocktail wear. And I'm interested that you say it took us a while to catch up with Louise Gray, because it seems like that's something she's always championed, something that's actually relevant.
Louise does what the fuck, not bougie. And it's important because if you look at fashion, that's very much how people dress now. They're not trying to dress to look rich, to look middle class. They're trying to dress to make you go wow, to get on Instagram, to get on your Twitter, it's that is a universal. And if you look, that's what she kind of does, and that's where that fun comes from. And and so I think that's important.
And we can tell that people want that as well, because obviously we mentioned the kind of collaboration before, but actually the filming started. But a collaboration with Topshop, doing extremely well. And it is kind of a version of what she does.
She has mentioned before, which I found interesting, that if you get her clothes, they won't make you look taller or slimmer or...
Yeah, they just make you look cool.
They just make you look cool. And I think that's what, all of those girls who surround her in Dalston are doing.
I mean, the other thing with Louise Gray is it's Louise Gray. There are only a few lots of designers come along and you see the show and people say it's really good and the cut's really good. And sometimes the press even go on about how great they are. But if they disappeared tomorrow, nobody would care, nobody would know. It's like with Louise Gray, it's what I call one of those people who you kind of know what the deodorant would look like and you know what the perfume would smell of. And that's real fashion designer. That's somebody that could go on to be a huge name. And that was always obvious with Kim Jones and Gareth Pugh. And they've gone on and done that. And I think she's marketable.
Would you like to see her at another house? Would you like to see her bring that kind of vision somewhere else?
I think that could stunt her. I don't know. I feel like that would almost compress her and not allow her to be this creative spirit. Could destroy someone like that, I think.
But I think that's, in a way, the strength of her brand, is that she's growing it slowly and holistically on her terms, and is offering something that we actually make an authentic connection with, that isn't, so the collaborations that she does and, the footprint that she's leaving in a way, maybe having learnt lessons, because I think, certainly in the past 10 years, we've seen a lot of designers being, almost having the life sucked out of them by corporates who want a piece of the action. And, ideally, all of our creatives have got a 30, 40-year career in front of them in which they're making careful choices and they're not getting, sucked into being cog in the wheel, churning out collections. I would hate to see someone with her level of just spirit go into the corporate system, because, as we know, that puts people under enormous pressure.
Do you think that's why her collaborations have been so smart, in a sense, doing like what she did with Brora, and then Steve, you mentioned Topshop, because that's probably given her that kind of financial stability to still be able to be really creative on her own? Do you think that's been a better avenue for her?
You have to have collaborations. It's the bottom line is it is so tough for young businesses, new businesses, businesses with, authenticity and integrity to survive. Just the seasonal, turnover with having to put on high production shows and be in a competitive arena. So you have to have them. They're often what keeps people going. For Giles, the New Look collaboration made it possible for him. But it's about having it on your terms.
And not sacrificing anything. Louise definitely hasn't done that.
But it also makes fashion pop. Like Louise's thing for ASOS with the jewellery, it was amazing because she hadn't done jewellery before. It's quite hard to do jewellery on a big scale. And all of a sudden, you make it something, one, she's marketable, so you make it something that my mum could be interested in. You make it something that kids 15-year-old girls in Leeds can be interested in, and you explode fashion from being this sort of elitist, rarefied thing, or something that Rihanna puts on in a video. You explode it to like actually important, actually exciting, actually art, and actually touching people, which is just fun and good, and sort of, that's what it should. That it's exciting, not what it should be.
I'm interested in this idea of her clothes being, exciting and fun and accessible, which is kind of what you mentioned, what you all mentioned before, in the terms of how they make people feel cooler, not thinner or slimmer or sort of, more feminine anyway. And I'm interested because there is this idea of her being a woman designing for herself. And Caryn, you've talked and written a lot about, considerate design. And do you think that's what she is doing by, thinking, I'm not going to even focus on making the body look great, I'm just going to make women feel cool and good? Do you think that's what she's...
Well, I think she's channeling, her desire to be an individual through her clothing. So one of the things I see when I look at what she is offering is that self-styling becomes, immediately accessible. So, grab a bit of here, mix it up, create your own look. She's allowing a kind of platform for people to express everything they want to about themselves by maybe just even bringing in a part of her collection, not feeling like you've got to do the look, everything's got to be head to toe polished. But I also am a great believer in empathy and what empathy can do for design, when instead of telling women what they want, is actually feeling it, because you're talking and you're listening and you know what clothes feel like on. And I do get a sense of her living what she does, which is that authenticity again, which is a nice thing to be around. You can feel it. It's got a pulse.
Well, also, she's a style icon.
Yeah.
She looks amazing.
Yeah.
She's one of those girls. There's a few girls around that every time I see them, I'm sort of like, thanks. Thanks, just like thanks for existing, because you've
brightening up our lives.
Yeah, you've really made my day. I mean, she's like my neighbour, and I'm just like really pleased when I see her on the corridor.
Perks you up a bit.
Yeah.
I think when there's such an identikit kind of idea of what fashion can be like, and especially on the front row, and everybody getting street style snapped, and you see the same outfit just over and over again. So it is lovely for someone to just trailblaze and be like, yeah, my hair's blue today and I'm wearing odd shoes. That's how I roll. That's really nice, but she won't have even thought about it. It's not. She's not thinking in terms of this will look cool and someone will notice me. It's just natural.
That's what she does.
And liberating.
I'm quite interested in this idea because Daryoush, you mentioned it before when you were talking about, like, you wear it to look cool, you wear it to get on Twitter, you wear it to get on Instagram, and it is this idea of competitive dressing, and it's something that we mentioned in yesterday's panel when we were talking about digital print and why that's had such a moment. And I know this is kind of your expertise, this whole street style thing, so I do want to pick up on it a bit. But do you think there is an element of what's making the London brands that are doing well at the moment successful is that element of women trying to outdo each other with clothes? Because there is an element to Louise's stuff where you want to be like, I look fucking good, I look better than you. And do you think that's kind of part of her success?
I always feel like with her gang it would be more of like a camaraderie kind of, oh, you got that thing and that's really great and I got the version in this colour. I don't feel like with her crew it would be a competitive thing. It's just fun and spirited. But I do feel like, with some fashion editors having 5 changes a day and borrowing clothes, and it can feel a little bit disingenuous sometimes. So it's a crazy thing that street style has turned into.
What are your thoughts on the whole street style thing, Caryn?
Well,
I'm really interested in this actually.
I mean, we obviously began, funnily enough, we both found, we're linked, you've just started ID and I was there 31 years ago. And so I obviously began, that was a big part of what I did, was photographing people in the street. So it could have been Boy George in a nun's outfit. But equally, it could have been, an amazing sort of old duffer who was in his tweeds looking fantastic. It was all ages, all nations. And that was how I started. And there wasn't any level of competition. It was much more about, this is who I am. Who are you? So it was a space in which, remember, we had no social networking, we had no mobile phones, you could not communicate. And most of the time we were, we were in a space in which we wanted to make that communication to each other really quickly through visual identity. And so I fell in love with the power of clothes and their ability to do that, and the power of image to make a statement around personal identity. And I never anticipated that would be appropriated by the fashion industry and sold back as a set of seasonal rules, which it is now. And I think there is the very separate space in the way in which it used to happen, and I'm in danger of sounding like a nostalgic old git, and the way in which creativity has been corporatized now, and the way in which it happens now, so that we do have this. Even when you go to Somerset House, the space for everyone to have their photograph taken and to tweet it out, and of course
and to go there to get photographed as well.
First
I mean, lots of people
place,
that are there and they don't seem to be going anywhere or doing anything.
I was saying, they're not even trying to get into the shows anymore.
It's just taking pictures of people taking pictures of people taking pictures. It's bizarre and it's great fun for everybody, but it is just madness.
So do you think we've lost that sort of interplay between personal expression and clothing?
That level of competitiveness which you alluded to then, I think that is an unfortunate side effect of the way in which fashion has been speeded up. And in order to have some meaning, it's all been about speed, and that makes you relevant this season, but you might not, or even today, but not tomorrow. And so there's a level of panic and anxiety sometimes, often, around whether people feel that they're relevant enough and they're not enjoying who they are.
I think it's awareness, because I think one of the things, the problem is that it's so obvious how to do it that it's almost impossible. It's quite difficult to not want to play the game. So you get people that perhaps in the past might have gone and hidden off and done something underground. It's very difficult because it's so obvious, and the other problem is the people with money, the establishment, are looking to plug into that. What the hell is Grazia doing knowing anything about Dalston?
Apart from the fact I live there, but
no, but the point is that like 30 years ago,
it's crazy.
Now you probably know loads about Peckham too, and you probably know loads about,
there's nothing hidden anymore. I think kind of secret. I think it's in the mainstream. But it has positives and negatives,
So it's hard for kids because of course they're competitive, because they can see how easy it is to do a blog and end up being relevant.
When you have sites as well, in terms of street style, mentioning that, there are often every season pretty much there's one site, like Refinery 29 or Fashionista, kind of publish something like how to get shot by the sartorialist or how to get shot by the Tommy Time kind of thing. And there's like a checklist of things you could wear, and you pretty much you're guaranteed to get shot. And there's definitely something.
But I suppose my point is, it's about being competitive. It seems to be what I'm learning is about the competition around the promotion of you, not you. So for me, clothes they're an amazing thing that is about the celebration of me, not the promotion of me. And I think that's the difference. But that's a whole cultural change with social networking and our need somehow to broadcast who we are using what we have to hand, which is ultimately a veneer. It's artifice. It's not actually.
There might be some action.
Sorry, we're getting close.
Started.
Sorry to cut you off, Caryn.
It's all right. It's always good to, I think. So where's this?
This is at the Topshop space at the Tate.
It's a beautiful venue.
It's amazing. Really transports you into a different world.
I mean, you'd definitely get shot in that, wouldn't you?
But I saw that because she kind of gave a preview, I think on Style.com. If I can mention another site, Style.com, and she said it's kind of the basis is another man's, one man's rubbish is another man's treasure. So that's kind of the appropriation. Forgotten items.
That motto looks like her.
Discarded. It does, doesn't it?
But that's interesting with her stuff though, because it always has that kind of recycled element.
But the work and the labour that actually goes into producing those textiles that look as though they're just jigsawed and thrown together is really the incredible thing about her, because I mean she is originally a textile.
Maybe I'm being unfair on her, but I always feel like that's under-publicised. I feel like people don't focus on as much as they should on her craftsmanship, because it is incredible.
Hopefully now, she's properly established herself within London.
And the production is getting better and better, the quality of everything.
But it coming back to that space where we were saying, people weren't ready for it, or I wasn't at the time. The aesthetic was quite different, and she wasn't operating a sort of mainstream, a sort of main fashion energy. And it's almost like, a lot of establishment design has moved into this space of wanting to make it more spontaneous, wanting to make it more individual, more youthful, this whole kind of collage of fabrics that we're seeing from everybody. That was something that, she was doing from the off. And everyone now has moved into her space, and she's at the same time has moved into the high production space of wanting to be, wanting to not stand out for perhaps having a slightly amateur feel, but wanting us to see the design.
I think that's I like her ambition. I noticed this maybe 18 months ago, that she's extraordinarily, it wants to be a big designer or wants to be a great designer. And I think, not everybody does with that same energy, and I find that quite exciting about her as well, combined with the fact that she does,
But I love also, we just saw a model come out with a toilet roll attached as a brooch. And, there's this kind of, which again takes me back to early ID days, there's this kind of slightly throwing it together, backstage, someone came out with tissue paper or something. You can just imagine someone going, that's great, right, okay, shove that on, right, off you go. Whereas, now a lot of it is all sorted out way beforehand, ticked off, signed off, everything, there's no last moment artistic, I'm loving it, do it, go,
Do it more, we need something else on there kind of thing. There's definitely an element of that.
This feels very savvy and commercial at the same time, because I read, she did an interview quite recently where she was like, you don't have to wear it with the tights and all the accessories, you could just wear the dress. And actually, as much as this is really great to look at and the styling makes it look incredible, if you distill this down, there's a lot of stuff there that would sell incredibly well. There was a really, really beautiful little sequin dress that you could see on, if a girl literally just wore that with some really simple heels, that could translate to a completely different audience to what Louise Gray usually has. Something like that, exactly.
Absolutely, great party dress. But if you're going to the right kind of party, which Louise would be going to, you'd be wearing the whole
thing.
But I think it's a great time for her to really push forward, because so many designers are just evolving rather than having this revolutionary change of trends and ideas each year. And she's been doing that for the 6 years that she's been in the fashion industry. And finally everybody's realised that actually that's good. It's okay to not have to switch it up.
Even for doing it for 6 years, it doesn't feel tired or old.
No.
You managed to keep it fresh and interesting every season.
Well, as much as it's very on of the moment, and we were all saying, everyone's catching up with her now and it's kind of having its moment, it doesn't feel trend driven at all. It doesn't feel like it's kind of just going to be a brief moment that will disappear away. It feels like it's very authentic.
But that's the thing, is that's what we're saying, that she's been doing this for 6 years, and everyone else now has kind of cottoned on to, that's where the energy is. Yeah. And sometimes you can't always know where the energy is going to go. And that is why I think we all love fashion, is that you cannot be predictive. So she's holding that space of a kind of spontaneous, slightly knocked together, stepping outside of kind of corporatized creativity. And that's where everyone wants to be, because we've had enough of the kind of churn it out trend for trend's sake.
Yeah, this is in, this is not in, this is in, this is in. It's exhausting for girls, I think.
One of the things that I find interesting when you said earlier, would she work for a big brand? I mean, I have no idea. But there's something quite similar with the Italian brands, in the way that sort of the glitzier Italian brands tune into sort of trashier culture, like the laundry bag. I can so imagine Moschino doing that, or Dolce & Gabbana doing it. You can so imagine Italians doing that. Well, exactly. And so I think she could, if somebody was brave enough.
See, I'm just loving that. What's that?
That's
sort
a of tinfoil tray.
Yes.
Like a turkey or something at Christmas.
So
like Mum's gone to Iceland kind of thing.
But there's a very specific kind of desire to go, I've ramped up the production, and this is all put together in a kind of high-end way, but this is still who I am. I'm not playing that game, which it's speaking to me. I'm really enjoying it.
It's beautifully produced as well. You can see that stuff is flawless.
And when you see someone like Lulu Kennedy, one of her biggest fans and supporters in it, she looks totally different to how Louise looks in it, and I love that. It really can translate. People might look at the collection and think, I could never wear that, but it can translate into totally different wardrobes, especially that final look there. I mean, everybody's going mad for printed trousers. They could be worn by.
You could just put like a black sweater with those and some heels, and it would look really nice.
Yeah.
I want to see her come out. I want to see what she's wearing. I'm more excited about that than the actual clothes.
Is she there?
It's quite a delay,
Maybe she's putting the last bit
Yeah.
of tinfoil on.
Everybody's waiting very obediently.
I like that the girls seem to have a story in that. That's something that I think it's really hard to get right. You know, sometimes it's annoying when the girls look like they've...
So we didn't see her. She didn't come out.
Sad.
Well, no,
Oh,
come
okay.
on.
All right, here we go.
Just teasing us.
Just having too much fun backstage.
I always actually, I don't know about anyone else, I always feel quite cheated when the designer doesn't come
There's
out.
a bit of a thing
I
for that.
want
Lots
to
of young
make
ones
a
aren't doing
connection
it.
with them.
Well, it's like Christopher Shannon on the menswear side. I mean, he's very shy, and there's a
Yeah.
point I think Lulu tried to drag him out last season.
Yeah.
No, he kind of poked his head out, and that was as much as we got.
But you know, also you get the catwalk. I mean, I've seen Donatella do the entire catwalk.
Oh, I love that when she does that though. She's having a great time. I absolutely love that.
I like the quick run out, the sort
Yeah.
of trot out and the quick.
The Alexander Wang sprint down the runway.
I mean, Julian McDonald really basked in his comeback the other day. That was hilarious. That
The
was a
D
full-on-
squared boys are the best. When they like make a little formation of models around them. It's amazing.
Who is it that always used to do a cartwheel down? Was it the American designer, Betsy Johnson, always would come out and, you know, cartwheel down.
Wow, that's impressive. We should bring that back. Someone should bring
Athletic,
that back.
yeah.
Really?
There she is,
Should we give
black
her a
hair this time.
So what everyone seemed really keen on it. What are our gut reactions? How do we think she's moved her aesthetic forward? Is this what we were expecting for this season? What are our thoughts? There's Alex Fury. That's really bizarre.
It's you know sort of the grandeur of the setting, but it does seem like she's kind of even pushed it that bit further. She's even that more furthermore evolved, and I don't want to say polished, but because it is in one sense. But yeah, like I said, it still hasn't lost any of its sense of fun.
No.
So yeah.
Would you agree?
I think the aesthetic's still very similar. If anything, there are actually less prints and less clashing going on in this collection than I've probably ever seen of hers before. You know, she's incredible at just putting the most random prints and fabrics together, and that almost felt a little tiny bit more refined than usual.
And it takes a real confidence, doesn't it, and a real strength in your own ability to actively try and make your collection look studenty by putting a toilet roll on it and stuff like that, knowing that it's still going to look absolutely amazing because it's beautifully done. I think that's really impressive.
She
with
has
her.
great confidence and great conviction in her style, and I mean, she's like super determined.
She's a really ambitious girl as well. I think it's easy to just look at the colour and think she's all about having fun, but I think she has built her brand incredibly successfully and with a great sort of great focus on where she wants to be. What would you like to see next for her?
I mean, I don't.
Sorry, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know about. I mean, for me, I think there's also beauty in chaos. You know, I mean, Bernard. I've never spoken to Louise really about it because really she does when she sort of rationalises things. It is fun, but somebody like Bernard Willen, you know, he kind of has more of a philosophy of it, and it is just about sort of freedom and freedom basically and anarchy. And I think that there's a lot of that in what Louise does, and there's a real beauty to that. But significantly, she had brown hair, which is,
Toning things back.
Yes, sophistication, future.
It's interesting that you mentioned this anarchy thing, because that takes me back to what we were talking about when we started the original discussion, when we talked about kind of how I think Stevie said she symbolises what London's about, and it is this idea of, like anarchy and mayhem and everyone doing something a bit mental. But what's interesting is this is a very sort of 2013 version of that, because it is this anarchy and it is this idea of chaos and beauty in chaos, but it's also a business and it's also commercial. And I think it's kind of, she's one of those designers that is still very London in the sense of doing something mental, but she's forcing people to take London seriously, and I find that really
might be mentioned
refreshing.
in the title as well, because hey crazy kind of thing. We kind of said this is probably the least craziest collection we've seen. Aside from the bog roll and the kind of the Baco foil kind of belts, it did seem to be quite a refined collection. So maybe
she's talking to the buyers, like, hey crazy, buy me.
But I think that is so important for a young business actually. When you're getting feedback where they're saying we could sell more of this, but we're struggling to sell that. We'll buy that one outfit because we know it tells a story and it's going to be a nice sort of gallery piece. Yeah. But this is what sells, and that is ultimately, isn't it, the balance. of being able to create for those who will photograph and those who will buy, and the two are incredibly separate. And so, you know, we're all of us kind of consuming it from a point of view of not buying it and not selling it on to a consumer, and is the biggest challenge for you know, our designers who have their own personality, who we look to them for a kind of sort of a maverick stance, but ultimately we really want them to have fantastic sell-through, because in some ways you only get a couple of seasons in that space where independent buyers are thinking, okay, let's give you a go. You know, I've been watching you for 6 seasons, and you know, I'm feeling it. But let me just see, if I'm going to take, you know, a couple of dozen pieces of yours, I want them to go. I don't want to be sailing them right at the end. And so that is really important. And like you said, maybe she has been listening about where it needs to go in order to land up in the wardrobes of women, you know, not just sort of nationally, but internationally.
The interesting thing, I heard a couple of months ago, I was speaking to Justin from myTeresa.com, who's their main buyer there, and he was talking about how he does buy those key kind of really big show-stopping pieces from the shows, because they do actually sell. People almost don't want those middle ground bits. They either want, I don't know, like maybe a basic Christopher Kane cashmere, or they want the bonkers perspex moire skirt. It's interesting that no one actually wants to be too middle of the road. So I think Louise still has a massive opportunity to sell those really key kind of signature pieces, and she doesn't have to dumb it down.
Well, also people are so informed now, like so informed that they recognise a print. So you have, like, you know, the whole thing that Riccardo Tisci did at Givenchy, where basically you had all these guys wearing the print as if it wasn't a label, but really it was the most
biggest
vulgar
brand
label.
Yeah, the most obvious brand.
I always talk about this, like the new branding. I'm really obsessed with it.
Well, it is, and so, you know, I think you can sell that. And also, Louise, I was talking to her, I don't know, about 6 months ago about America, and she was saying that America's, you know, a really great market for her, which, you know, you'd often think America's quite conservative, and it is, but she translates really well.
Did she say why she thought that was, or anything?
No.
No, that's so interesting. I wouldn't have expected that in that way.
New York just doesn't have those trailblazing, crazy labels.
No.
Apart from maybe Creatures of the Wind, who are doing something different out there. There must be girls who are desperate for something really cool and different.
I'm interested because, Caryn, you kind of hinted at this when you talked about, you know, designer has a few seasons where they get the buyers to come, and it is like designers have a window, you know, where they can either make it or they don't. I know that sounds overly simplistic and quite harsh, but it is, they have that space.
Well,
if
I've got a boutique and I'm investing in somebody's stuff and I can't seem to shift it out of the shop, I mean, it would just be good business for me to kind of go, look, I'm sorry, but wherever I'm based, they don't seem to get it, and it's.
So how do you think the brands working today that people, you know, are really excited about and really love, so things like Louise Gray or Miriam Kirchhoff or even JW Anderson, how do you think what do they need to do to ensure that they're still here in 6, 7, 16 seasons time? Well,
I think fit is everything, and I think you know, that in itself is understanding, you know, not maybe making assumptions about what's required for comfort based off a bust stand and a professional model, both of whom are very similar in that they both remain silent, there's no feedback, they do a very set load of moves, you know, you don't sit down on a catwalk or run for a bus. And, you know, I have worn sample garments where I've thought, I loved that on the catwalk, and then when I've put it on, it's been a tough one. And so I think that is one of the spaces, you know, where there's, for every designer, it's an absolute given that their design talent is top of the tree. But when it sometimes becomes armholes that are too narrow, you know, restrictive movement, something that's not particularly supportive of a body, and it looks great on a model, but it doesn't then translate to ordinary women, that's where we lose out. So in order to make more of a secure business proposition. There always needs to be that understanding of end user satisfaction.
Would you guys agree with that? Is that what you think is going to make a designer last?
I think it really, really helps. And Louise, like we said earlier, it may not be about her clothes making you look slimmer or taller, but you also don't want it to be uncomfortable or ill-fitting or pulling at the thigh or whatever. So yeah, I think that is an integral part of buyers doing a good job and things selling and being rebought.
And we've seen nothing from that collection to kind of suggest there's going to be a problem with fit or with a silhouette or anything like that. It is kind of an array of kind of layered separates, so we can, the buyer can take however much or however little as they want, really.
I mean, I think there is also, obviously it's about having a progressing story as well, and maintaining engagement with the media and with the press, carrying on having a story to tell. I mean, obviously if you buy something and it falls apart, you're not going to go back. But I think a lot of people, you get that first, everybody in London complains about it, you get that first couple of years support from the press, and then you've got to invent stories to tell. You've got to make happenings happen. You've got to build something around your brand to keep people interested, and because you've got to compete with the fact that you don't have an advertising budget. And so how are you going to get those, and that's where collabs come in, and it's where so many great designers, they're their own PR. Even if they've got brilliant PR, they still have all the press's phone.
Louise is very good at that. I think she's so good at that, making a story and making a point in a way that feels very organic. It doesn't feel forced with her.
Well, I think she is a story, in terms of that kind of need to engage, constantly kind of promoting what you're about. There is something about her is very interesting. She isn't. I don't get a sense of her being just kind of cog in a wheel stuff. I'm in. Funny enough, before this started, I was googling because I really wanted to know more, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't. The articles where I thought, well, where's the whole, double-page spread in the broadsheets, and where's the? Let's really get into her and what's her aesthetic.
It's very superficial.
I couldn't find it. I didn't really learn anything, and I think there's a lot to learn about her. I think she's really an interesting, almost a space of not a kind of commercial energy, but an artist. That. What inspires her, that kind of thing.
But I think it's kind of funny because in a way womenswear designers aren't really, female designers aren't really interviewed in that way. Maybe Mucha, but they're not really interviewed in that way. They're interviewed, it's very much like hip hop, like hip hop stars aren't interviewed about music. It's almost like the same with female fashion designers. They're not interviewed as artists. But then also Louise is very matter of fact, and because it is her life that's fascinating.
That's interesting that you said that. That's a whole new show. I was going to wrap things up, but I can't now. That's interesting. You're going to have to go back to that. But no, I've never thought of that, but that's 100% true. You think if someone like Chris Kane or Jonathan Saunders is interviewed, they'll be asked about what they're making and their craft and how they do it and their inspirations for the season. But if you interview a female designer, it is about their life, and I guess that's because people.
And it's often about their look. And how they dress.
We had this conversation yesterday because someone was like, I've never seen Mary Katranzu wear her own print. Like, do you think that's a bad thing? And some people were like, yeah, she should live her own brand. But then it got me thinking, actually, no, it's completely legitimate that she sees this as her job and her trade. She makes something. She doesn't have to actively involve herself in that sort of show. But it made me think a bit about that and how it must be very different being a female designer.
Well, you're alluding to, each person is an individual, isn't it? And we all, we kind of maybe follow the designers that we do, or we're inspired by people because of what they communicate to us, and we're all individuals. I mean, I think that the split you were just talking about, which I had never thought about, but, clearly you can't ask a man so much about his lifestyle for a female audience because they're not engaging in that in that way. They're either engaging with their clothes or they're engaging with the person if she's female. And so I think there's, quite often male designers will talk in a different way about what women want and what their aesthetic is. And I suppose back to Mary, whether they do, whether they don't, I don't think it sort of signifies a better approach whether they wear it or
But there is an
or not.
expectation that it's more of a lifestyle with a female designer, that they must naturally be designing for themselves. And I think Louise quite naturally is, and she's designing for herself and her friends, but I don't think that should be an expectation on a female designer, that because you're designing for women you have to live that aesthetic. It's a strength.
But Mary is quite an exception to the idea when you think of Roxanda Elinchik or someone like Laura Boink, or they are the brand. It doesn't necessarily make it stronger or weaker for Mary to not be, but it is interesting that it's a common.
And that could possibly be like Mary's kind of route into the industry. She wasn't necessarily studying fashion design. She kind of fell into it, and maybe that's where it was. It was the kind of the love of textile design that kind of really drove the brand forward. So yeah, I personally don't think it's necessary for designers to wear their own designs. It's nice for us to see and to comment on, but it's not necessary.
I can't imagine though spending my life working on something that I think is beautiful that other women will want that I don't want, or surely that's got to be one of the perks.
But don't you think it's
I would think so, yeah.
like just wanting to separate yourself from it? It's like it's
a uniform and an ease, I think.
But it's like a bus driver. What's that expression? Like bus
driver's holiday.
Yeah, it is that thing. It's like if you work in TV, you don't want to go home and watch loads of TV. I guess maybe it's. I must think it must be endlessly tiring to make clothes all day, and then also like wear clothes all day. You just be like, get me away from it. I feel like that all the time.
She does wear something.
Yeah, but you still got to wear them. So the fact that you've got a shed load of them in your bag, maybe samples that you're thinking about. To me that's so much easier than thinking, oh, I've got nothing to wear. I'll have to go and get something.
Yeah, no, this is true. You really opened a can of worms there.
We have to come back.
I'm going to go sit at my desk and think about this. Well, shall we give Louise another round of applause to wrap things up? But thank you so much.